In the fabled land of Northern California, nestled in the Valley of Sacramento, two friends begin a journey to enlighten the world about their experience living life as a Xennial. But what is a Xennial, you may ask? If you wish to know, then follow them on their adventures.
Welcome to the Xennial Chronicles. This is James.
And this is Mike.
And we're here today on, again, weird schedule thing. We're on a Sunday, so this is going to be, we have some, it's topical. There's a reason I'm saying that we're on a Sunday.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be this is going to be coming out quicker than recently what we've been doing. We normally had a 2 or 3 day lead time. So things happen between when we record a podcast and when a podcast comes out, like major newsworthy events. I don't know, the rampant racism that happens when people of color try to get, major government assignments, and how completely awful it is to watch these people just tear apart a totally perfectly immaculately qualified person just because of the color of their skin. I'm of course speaking of the SCOTUS nomination.
Holy shit. I have never seen someone so qualified for the job. I've never seen someone so patient in my life in the face of so much bullshit.
I mean, I can remember somebody that was as qualified for a job and was as patient in the face of a bunch of bullshit. Her name was Hillary. I did stand with her. I freely admit that I will stand with her. And of course,
we're opening with like political affiliation practically, and it sucks that you can. Yeah, it sucks that you have to consider it a political affiliation at this point. Like you're just looking at somebody get badgered for the most with the most insane questioning I've seen in a long time.
And in one case, it was very much about in both cases it was they were being badgered because of their personal political affiliations. But in the more recent case, it was very much about the racial profile of the person.
For sure.
But there is also the fact, let's be real. And this is, by the way,
and we get I apologize for calling this out, just like getting super deep into it. Like it's okay. I'm very willing to have this conversation. Okay. You know what I mean?
Then don't apologize for it. If you're willing to have it, then no apologies. I'm not giving any apologies.
Fair. You know what? Fair.
But what I'm going to say is the other reason that both of these women, I just said the reason, both of these women were attacked in the way that they were was because of the fact that they were women. That's the only reason. Some dude can be up for Supreme Court job and talk about how much he loves beer and not remembering possibly raping people, but crying. But that guy is okay for the job. But you put somebody with a vagina up there, and apparently they're not okay with that. Anyway, just a little tidbit there. No apologies from James. I stand with the women. They're better than us. We just need to realize this. They are. They're better looking. They're just better.
Yes. Yes. All right. Now I feel awkward.
But here's the fun part. That should be like that. And of course, another thing that we haven't commented on yet. And I don't know why
we dig ourselves out here.
No, I'm working this.
Okay.
Another thing that should be and is dominating the news cycle is the events that are happening in the Ukraine, and that should be dominating the news cycle.
Is it? Hold on one second. It's not. There's not a "the" in front of Ukraine, right?
Sorry,
it's
just in front of Ukraine. It's just Ukraine. We're Americans, so we say things the wrong way because we're stupid. It is Ukraine.
The Brazil.
Yes, the Brazil. Well, I mean, we are the United States. So we think we got to put a "the." We're going to the England. You know what I mean?
I'm flying to the Japan.
No, I mean
it doesn't sound right, man. It doesn't at all.
Here's the thing though. We do go to the United Kingdom. I think we got it from the British. They messed up our language. They left us with a bunch of messed up stuff.
It's their fault.
Oh, it's always the British fault. Except with Doctor Who, they did right with that, and and they also did right with minis, but that's just my personal opinion. Currently, but anyway,
yeah, I bet. I'm curious what your opinion was beforehand.
They were cute, but I wasn't sure. I mean, it would be kind of neat to have one. Austin Powers had one, so he's he was a guy that had some very misogynistic views. That once he started to realize how bad they were. Hey, I'm good with Michael Caine having one. So yeah. Anyway, the events that are happening in Ukraine are newsworthy events, and they have dominated the news cycle, as did the Supreme Court nomination. But those ended up being overshadowed by a whole different thing that happened between when we recorded our last podcast and when it came out. I'm of course referring to what happened at the Academy Awards.
Oh man.
Now this is something I'm not going to go into too much depth because so many people have talked about this.
Oh, no. Okay. I might have a response depending on what you say.
For the last week, yes, everybody, since it happened, there have been so many different comments. You're the one who actually sent something to me. I'm watching just like, I don't even remember what I was watching on TV, just something on TV, probably some streaming show that my wife was watching. And you sent me this message about what happened. I'm like, what the hell? And it was the video. And I'm like, what the hell is this? And my that was my first thought. I watched the video. I'm like, oh my God. Then my second thought is, what has happened to you, James, that you don't even know the Academy Awards are on? Because you used to watch the Academy Awards every single year. And I heard this echoed so much that like nobody knew that the Academy Awards were even on.
Oh, yeah. No, yeah, absolutely. There was like, I had no clue myself that the Academy Awards were on. It was a friend of mine sent me the video about it after it had already happened. And I lost it.
There was a moment where I was like, was this maybe a PR thing to get people to watch the Academy Awards? Because they realized, they looked at the numbers and like, nobody's watching this. We need to do something.
Dude, oh my God. There are so many people that I'm seeing. No, there are so many people that I'm seeing about this that are saying that it's staged. And that's absolute bullshit. It was not a staged event. Like
I almost would have believed it when I had seen that very shortly before or after it was announced that there was that Chris Rock was doing a tour. I was like, so is this a staged thing for the tour? But then all the fallout that happened afterwards.
And he tried to avoid even talking about it his first show.
Yeah,
it was not staged at all.
Yeah, that's why I don't necessarily believe it was, but it had the interesting side effect for me. Again, you see all the news stuff. Obviously, SNL covered it because SNL covers everything that happens like that.
You know what? I've only seen, and I kind of want to see it because I've only seen, because there's no way that they couldn't, right? But I have only seen the thumbnail, and I have not seen the actual skit.
It's a funny skit. It's a funny skit.
It seems okay. Really so well. if I may, because I am just, it looks like a very Statler and Waldorf type moment. Judging from the thumbnail. If it's not like that, that's completely fine. I am literally judging. Like, this is Mike judges a book by its cover. You know what I mean? Like, this is exactly what that is. Like, exactly what you shouldn't do. Yeah, but it does look very appealing, and I do want to see the skit. I just haven't yet.
It's actually got a totally different feeling than what you're thinking of.
Okay.
It's a totally different feeling.
Okay.
It's more of a caught in the moment and didn't expect to be.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's actually really, really funny the way that they structured the skit for it. Very funny.
Okay.
Very modern, very funny, and very deferential. And so I don't know. It's a weird skit. I'll explain it later to you, so I don't spoil anything for anybody that hasn't watched it yet.
Don't spoil it for me either, because I just want to see it, and then maybe I'll talk about it afterwards.
Okay. But the effect it had on me was that as I was prepping for dinner tonight, hamburgers, by the way, because
nice
hamburgers are good.
Yes.
I had pizza for lunch, so why not have hamburgers for dinner? I had pizza and donuts for lunch. It was a weird day.
Boy, are you going through some stuff, James?
Just, it's been a busy week. That's all.
Yeah, I understand. And same here.
And also, there was pizza and donuts, and I was just like, okay, both.
Hell yeah.
It was one of those moments where, like, do I have pizza? Do I have donuts? Why not have both? I didn't eat that much today. I had, I had some protein waffles this morning, some egg substitute and some turkey spam. So I really didn't have a whole lot of calories this morning. Okay, I'll just eat less fries tonight. I'll just have the burger, less fries, and I'm having some pizza and some donuts. That's literally the thing that went in my head. So
I like it.
It worked.
I like it.
But anyway, as I'm prepping dinner and doing stuff for dinner, my wife is trying to find something to put on the TV that the grandmother won't ask, a bunch of questions about, because we're trying to watch certain shows, including one that I started watching this week, which we had just finished an episode. And I'm going to get to that one later. I'm going to get to that show.
Okay.
That's going to be kind of a bit of a topic on for the rest of this podcast, is this show that we've been watching this week, to add to my frustration. But anyway,
okay,
we had just finished an episode. The wife is trying to find something to be on the TV that, again, won't cause a bunch of discussion and explanation, and very good not to put this show on with the grandmother watching, because she'll have to deal with all of the anger that my wife has had to deal with that I have for this show. She's been a trooper. I give her a lot of credit for it. She knows I'm using it as a therapy thing. But anyway, she decides she's flipping through, the guide, looking through the guide on, because yes, we're old and we have cable. That's just what we do. And she's looking through the guide to try to find something. And she's like, "Oh, wow. Did you know that the Grammys are on tonight?" And I'm like,
"Oh, man.
Really? The Grammys are on?" "Yeah, the Grammys are on." "You want me to put that on?" I'm like, "Well, hell yeah. See if somebody gets slapped on that thing."
Oh, no.
And so we put the Grammys on, which is something I almost never watch. I mean, I probably stopped watching the Grammys, really watching them like 15 years ago, although I stopped caring about them back in 90, 91, I think is when I stopped caring about the Grammys.
Good
when they
Lord,
made their biggest mistake.
Shit, you were like, what, 11?
Yeah, they made their biggest mistake ever, and I could never trust them again.
What, Vanilla Ice?
No, I loved Vanilla Ice. What are you talking about? I may have the year wrong. It was early 90s. I know that.
Wait, what was the mistake? Milli Vanilli?
No, they had a brand new category.
Jethro Tull.
Yes, they had a brand new category, and they gave the award for this brand new category to some flute wielding psycho. And I admit,
okay, look,
admittedly,
first off,
hold
that
on,
flute wielding psycho himself didn't believe that it was a proper
he didn't.
award.
He didn't, and I just said that to get a little bit of a rise out of you, because I know you have some love for Jethro Tull.
No, dude, Jethro Tull is my jam, especially 70s Jethro Tull. But yeah,
no, see, this is what I'm alluding to here. Like, if it was a previous era of Jethro Tull, they are totally deserving of that award in probably in the 70s, maybe even in the 80s. Not then. And definitely not.
Literally was a throwaway. Yeah, that was a throwaway award at that point. They're like, introduce it. Who's here? Who's the rock? Give it to those guys. They're like the most popular of all the rock acts. Like, nobody really knew. And I'm curious if is there a quote unquote academy for like Grammys, for the Grammys themselves? Like, they receive votes from like,
there's an organization of some type.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. And so what it was most likely. And this is some stuff, that's honestly, dude, you just gave me like ruling note video content here. Like the night that Jethro Tull beat Metallica for a Grammy in metal. Like that's a very well-known snafu, very well-known mistake. And I think it was, it wasn't 91. It was 89, because it was Justice that lost.
It was Justice? I thought it was the Black Album.
No, the Black Album was not the one that lost. It was And Justice for All. So it was 89. I think that was the Stormwatch album from Jethro Tull. And it was up against, for some stupid reason that nobody understands, including both of the bands that were there, for Best Metal Album. And Jethro Tull isn't even metal. They're just like, dude, we have a flute in our band. We play Baroque and roll. What the hell is this metal shit that you're giving us? And he goes up and he accepts the award, and he's like, thanks, but I don't understand why I'm here. Those guys, Metallica, like, they absolutely deserve it. We don't know why are we doing this? Like,
by the way, the Jethro Tull album was Crest of a Knave.
Oh, Crest of a Knave. Okay. Yeah. Stormwatch, right, I think, was somewhere around it, but
you are right. It was, And Justice for All. I almost now think that maybe
I remembered that because Metallica performed one at the Grammys. I think Whoopi Goldberg was one of the presenters or something like that, and she just like about had her face blown off by that performance. She didn't understand why Metallica was even there. I knew that, and she was presenting that year or something like that. I think. I could be mixing up with the Academy Awards of the same year. I don't have like a full database in my head about it, but I do remember that Metallica was at the Grammys. They smashed their performance of One like the gods that they are, and then everybody just didn't know what to do with it. It was so weird, man. It was one of the weirdest shows ever.
So, I mean, admittedly, And Justice for All, not my favorite Metallica album, but still better. And
I wonder who the other bands were for metal that year. I'm gonna have to look them up. Please continue.
Hold on.
Oh, you're looking them up? Let's see. Timestamp it. Grammy Award.
Metallica, Iggy Pop, Jane's Addiction.
For metal?
Yes.
Wait, in 89?
Yes.
How the fuck did Jethro Tull get it? They weren't even a nominee, or were they the ones that won and then everyone else was there? Oh, okay.
And Jethro Tull, yes.
Hold it. Grammy Award for Best Metal Performance. I think you're looking up a different year, because here's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing I Don't Believe in Love by Queensryche, won by Metallica, The Real Thing by Faith No More, Beast from the East by Dokken, Ultra Mega OK from Soundgarden, and it was, oh my goodness, okay, no. I was going to say...
No, this is for Best Hard Rock Heavy Metal Recording of 1989.
Yeah, first awarded in 1989. Oh, Heavy Metal Recording? Okay, I'm looking at... Best Hard Rock Metal Performance, Vocal or Instrumental. So it's either War, or either or, rather. I didn't mean either war. What the hell? Yeah, okay, so this is the one. The Controversy, The Aftermath. Okay, so you're right. It was... Okay, nominated works for the award were Blow Up Your Video by AC/DC, Cold Metal by Iggy Pop, Nothing Shocking by Jane's Addiction, Crest of a Knave by Jethro Tull, and it was the album. So it was the entire albums.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, Nothing Shocking. I thought that was an album title. I didn't think that was a song title. Okay, so that's what it was. Cold Metal by Iggy Pop, because... what the... Okay, so this is so weird, because... Yeah.
Other years of Iggy Pop, maybe. But still, no.
Well, Iggy Pop is to state that one artist does one type of music and one type of music only is hypocritical in itself. I mean, look what Dave Grohl does. Good Lord. He just released a death thrash album.
Well, and again, I'm not saying that Iggy Pop has not put out albums that were award-worthy albums. I'm just saying in that specific year, none of those other albums were even close to And Justice for All, and that's not even the best Metallica album. And And Justice for All was still better than all of those other albums. Those other performers have done really good albums, just not those ones that year.
Right.
Those ones were not to the equal.
That's fair. That's absolutely fair.
I mean, but yeah, I stopped trusting the Grammys at that point. But anyway, point being, we put on the Grammys for the first time in a long time. One of those moments where you feel like you're too old because you don't recognize any of the people that are performing. You like have heard their names, but you are looking at them like, oh, that's what that person looks like. Right. Saweetie, I've heard of Saweetie, but that's what Saweetie looks like. Okay, that makes sense. I did see performances by Billie Eilish, who was and yes, I pronounced her last name wrong on purpose. Who was wearing a Taylor Hawkins shirt. She
was just out here, and her tour bus parked in my hometown at a hotel that was like out near the Target.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and it was like did I say where I live? I don't think I've disclosed fully where I live, so I'm not going to do it now.
It doesn't need to be fully disclosed. But,
yeah, basically it's a suburb of Sacramento, way the hell out. Yeah, so parking in places like that, they're like way out where there's like almost nobody is a very good idea. And so I happened to see it. So I thought that was kind of fun. And she played like the night after I saw the bus. It was cool.
Her performance was decent. I'm not necessarily a fan, but I'm not also like oh my God, this is awful. I did hear a performance by Lady Gaga that was just, she was trying to do like jazz, and it was horrible. And normally I am a fan of Lady Gaga's music. I will admit that without any kind of cringe or anything. I enjoy her music. I did not enjoy this. I didn't even know who it was at first because I was doing something on my phone. The wife goes to change the channel, saying I cannot listen to her sing like this anymore. And I'm like, who the heck was that? And she's like, that was Lady Gaga. No, she goes back to the channel. I'm like, oh my God, change it. I can't do this.
Holy shit! Like I can't do this. It's funny because I got. Speaking of two different things, you're triggering two things. I'm just going to explain them right now. For me in my head. First off, Billie Eilish and jazz. She actually has. I'm going to have to forward you this song that I heard. It's off her debut album. It's about the one that won all the awards and stuff, and was like produced in her bedroom, or her childhood bedroom with her brother, and like all this shit. It was great. Yeah. But she has this song that is just an absolutely incredible jazz run, and I can't remember what the name of the damn song is. So I'm gonna have to literally listen to the album to find the song title.
This is Billie Eilish?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Which, I mean,
and holy shit, can she sing?
She's a fairly decent singer. I've just not necessarily been a fan of her music. I did hear that she did work on her own first album, and she does write her own stuff.
Yeah.
She's also like, I'm a super nerdy mega fan of the TV show The Office, The American Office, like hardcore nerdy. Like Rainn Wilson actually went to her house and quizzed her, and like she completely aced the quiz and was shocking him. with her answers. He thought it was just fantastic.
That's
so
fantastic.
She's got a geeky bent to her, and that's cool. I don't know her music enough.
I just dig the whole I dig the whole she has this dual body positivity / non she doesn't
she wears the baggy clothes and
she does the baggy clothes. Like, her image does not exploit her body, and on top of that, she is also someone who is a very body positive individual, like body image positivity individual. So her whole thing is the fact that it's about knowing and loving and accepting who you are, and not using your body as some kind of trophy to present to other people. I just think that is one of the coolest fucking things I've ever seen out of a pop artist. Name the last pop artist that was really like that from the get-go. Because she was introduced like that. I think that is probably worth more respect than most of the pop artists I've seen in my entire lifetime. On top of the fact that she's a fucking fantastic singer and she writes her own shit, I'm a huge fan of Billie Eilish just from a
personality standpoint,
personality and philosophy standpoint. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Makes me more interested to check out some of the music, see if the music is enjoyable. Because I mean, if it is, then I'm at least down for the music part. Again, I'm the guy who admits to loving Carly Rae Jepsen and the Spice Girls. So if the music is good and I enjoy it, we had an Aqua Day here at the house the other day. My daughter loves Aqua.
Oh, nice.
My wife has been smart to introduce her to good classic music. She's an ABBA fan. She's also a fan of System of the Down.
Shit. Yeah.
Oh, ABBA's amazing. I love
ABBA's fucking incredible. Did you hear the new album that they did?
I have not yet, and I'm interested because back when I was a teenager, I was buying ABBA albums, and my mother loved it, and my friends looked at me like I was weird because friends listening to 9 Inch Nails, and I pop on ABBA's greatest hits, and they're like, "What the hell? What kind of dancing queen you think you are? The things they're saying about you, we're starting to wonder, James." But
of course, because that was the time frame. That was when.
That was definitely the time frame, but yeah. I'm sorry. I like groovy music, and I like music that makes you want to sing and dance and whatnot. I can't dance for crap, but I like music that makes you feel that way. So it was fun. We were playing Aqua around the house while we were doing some housework and stuff, and of course I'm singing along with it, and my daughter's just looking at me like, "What the hell, Dad? You know this stuff?" I'm like, "Hell yes, I do, and not just Barbie Girl. I know the whole album."
Nice.
Aqua's awesome. I love that. I love a little bit of upbeat, almost electronica, whatever. Anyway, like I said, Billie Eilish's performance was fairly good. I don't know her stuff, but it was a good performance. Lady Gaga, awful. Trevor Noah though was the host, and I love Trevor Noah in almost everything.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Got to educate somebody. Somebody says, I love listening to him talk to grandmother. She's like, I love listening to him talk. He has such a great voice. I'm like, you know where he's from, right? What, England? No, he's from South Africa. Oh, okay. Yep. That's what you're hearing a little British, you're hearing a little Dutch, you're hearing a little German, because that's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, put the Grammys on first time in years just to see, hey, it happened on the Academy Awards. Is something going to happen on the Grammys? So far, nothing had happened on the Grammys. It was what little we watched of it, just a couple performances. The president of Ukraine was on there though. He was on there.
Fucking kidding me?
No, he was on there. Not like there, but like he had a video that was played on there.
Holy shit.
Yep, and then there was a couple of there was a singer and a poet from Ukraine that did a performance with John Legend. John Legend, the singer, sang a song, and in the middle of the song, a poet was reading a poem. Yep. So they,
John Legend is that's the kind of shit he does, and I actually super dig on it. He did the last thing I saw was an SNL performance that he did, and it was just this weird kind of thing. It was very slow jam type of stuff, and then to end the song, the guy got up and left the mic, and then the spotlight changed over to a guitar and an amp, and some dude walks on stage, and John's over on the side. He starts playing an arcade machine. It must have been some introverted type song or something. And the guy that's sitting there playing the guitar solo, it takes you about 20 seconds to realize that it's John Mayer.
Oh, nice.
Who didn't sing shit and just played the living fuck out of that guitar. And it was just a guest spot. Yeah, he's a fantastic guitarist. He just walks on, does his piece, and that was the end of the sketch, and it faded to black, and there were just that was it, and it was so cool. But John Legend is one of those people that just has the whole, I don't know, it's almost like a mysterious Tom Waitsy kind of thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but like
it's the presentation,
but it doesn't sound like he scratches his throat with a steel wool pad every day.
Right, exactly.
Which don't get me wrong, I love me some Tom Waits. Tom Waits is amazing.
Oh yeah, the guy's an incredible artist.
I mean,
great actor too, fantastic, especially character actor, incredible character actor.
Very, very much so. He probably did way too many drugs in his lifetime, and probably maybe still does. I don't know. And he definitely smoked way too many cigarettes.
He's like the lounge version of Iggy Pop. You know what I mean? Like Iggy Pop did some crazy shit, but you see what you get with Iggy Pop.
Yeah,
and Tom Waits is like Iggy Pop in the fact that he did a bunch of crazy shit, but he's just a different genre of.
But I will say though, if you're comparing, those are two good comparisons because they also both had acting careers. Tom Waits way more enjoy the stuff that he's done acting. He has two specific film roles that are just absolutely fantastic film roles. Renfield in Bram Stoker's Dracula, Francis Ford Coppola's version of Dracula. Holy shit,
that was Tom Waits.
Yep, he's Renfield. He's amazing as Renfield. He is literally the only bad. God. The only
I didn't realize that until you actually named it out, because I didn't know who Tom Waits was when I saw Dracula.
No,
and so I never put two and two together. But holy shit, that is Tom Waits.
Yeah, the only bad actor in that entire movie, and he's admitted that was probably his worst film role, was Keanu Reeves. And not a bad dude,
even
but
he's just like, I sucked at that. Yeah, he knew he was in the wrong. Like they just picked the guy up because he was hot shit, but it was the wrong thing. However,
totally
even Keanu Reeves is acting to the point where he hates it that much. That's like if you were to put George Clooney in a Batman similar situation, right? But it shows you how good that movie knows. Yeah, Clooney knows too, right? But it shows you how good that movie is, and everyone else in that movie is, that you could place Keanu Reeves in it in such a terrible acting role, and it can't ruin the movie.
No,
and Keanu's a great actor. He's known for doing the Keanu thing. It's just he tried to stretch way too far past his own boundaries. And
he was just miscast. It was a bad casting.
However, that said, everyone else in that whole movie were so good that it didn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it wasn't even one other person carrying that movie. Everybody else carried that movie.
Yeah.
I mean, when you list off the people in that movie, oh my god! But we're not talking about that movie today. We're talking about Tom Waits. The other major role, of course, at least in my mind, is in Mystery Men. His role in Mystery Men is fantastic.
Oh,
that's actually the most Tom Waits role. That's literally just kind of him. The fact that he's living in an old amusement park, that tracks. That totally tracks. And he's making non-violent weapons. That totally tracks. That makes complete and
it's almost like
sense.
Tom Waits as if he were put into just an alternate universe. Like if he never had a music career, this is what he would be if he was homeless.
Yeah, that's literally that's it makes perfect sense. It's very much a typecasting. We're gonna have you be alternate universe you. And I mean that happens often. Alternate universe. I mean that's what was Robert Downey Jr. in the MCU? He was alternate universe Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah. Like
that's
if he didn't get the acting, he would have been Tony Stark.
So it's like, okay, so Robert, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna have you be you but more rich. And you're not an actor, you make stuff, but you're more rich, like a lot more rich. And that's just be you more rich.
Okay. Well, like Batman rich? No, way more rich than Batman.
Yeah, actually, more rich.
Yeah,
more
he's
rich
got a
than
fuck
Batman.
ton more money than Batman.
Yeah, he's also way smarter than Batman. Let's just be clear about this. Tony Stark and like just so we're clear, I know it's DC and Marvel.
Yeah, I would say on
Tony Stark way richer, way smarter.
Between the two, I would be real. I would say Tony is much more of a tech head, but Batman is the detective. Like, but the thing is with Batman to have like Batman could take down Iron Man. He could do it. The only catch though is that he needs time. If it was a one-on-one confrontation, Iron Man would smoke him. Completely smoke him. He'd be done.
Well, now here's the thing though. If Batman has here's the thing. If Batman has enough time. If Iron Man had the same amount of time, Iron Man would be able to build the armor that would defeat Batman. So, and all the things to add on. So both of them, if they had equal amounts of time, I still
what I would love to see. That's what I would love to see. And I've introduced this to you, and I might as well tell everybody else about it. Yeah, they're called Death Battle is the name of it. Yeah, there's a series that I watch on YouTube as religiously as I can, and it's called Death Battle. And it is two superheroes or supervillains from different universes, comic book or other media, that are pitted in a fight to the death against each other. And basically, they take their weapons, their armor, their skills, and everything that they have put together and put them in a one-on-one fight to the death. And that's it. And I've seen Batman lose to a ton of people. Batman has lost to Spider-Man. He has lost to Black Panther. I believe they pit him against Iron Man, and he lost against Iron Man. Like,
the thing is, Batman's still just a person with gadgets. And again, if he's got time to plan, and the other person doesn't, and he can set up the location and whatnot, yeah, maybe he can come out on top. But all it takes is somebody with superpowers or in a super suit to unleash one good punch on him, and dude's toast.
Well,
he doesn't have the superhuman ability or metahuman, whichever group you want to mutated ability, whichever group you want to go to.
Right.
But that's to be expected. But anyway,
I would like to see actually one of those where you pit like where the Dark Knight Returns armor, where he kicks the shit out of Superman, and the Hulkbuster. Like, I don't know a lot of other Iron Man suits, but I know that the Hulkbuster suit is pretty fucking kicking.
The thing about the Hulkbuster suit is it's designed to fight against something that can take way more damage than what the Dark Knight Returns suit can take. And because here's the thing, you think that Superman's going to have as much damage as what the Hulk is going to have, right? Not necessarily,
definitely.
Because part of the way that suit works is part of the suit works to help absorb some of the impact, but he's got the kryptonite things to be able to slow him down a little bit, so the impact
it's tailor made for fighting Superman specifically.
Exactly. Right. So to fight the
Hulk, isn't that what the Hulkbuster suit is? It's just tailor made to fight the Hulk. Like, that was the point.
It's tailor made to fight the Hulk, but the thing is, the Hulk is way more powerful than what Batman's suit is. And so the Hulkbuster armor.
I would say, well, the thing is the Dark Knight Returns suit, the bat suit, the super bat suit, I guess we'll call it. Like, that one makes sense because it is tailor-made to exploit Superman's specific weaknesses that require thought and planning. This is and in that continuity, that is a 50-year-old Batman that fights a 50-year-old Superman, and they have known each other for at least well over 20 years at that point. Batman has been able to take the time to exploit as many weaknesses as were available to him.
Literally
at that time
frame. Literally the Hulkbuster armor. Tony could just stand there in the Hulkbuster armor and have Batman with his suit wail away on the armor, and it probably wouldn't even dent it.
Well, that's the thing is you would have to have something that he would have to throw out some kind of an EMP or something like that, and then you're adding things like, you know, Oracle versus Jarvis kind of a deal, like that kind of it. Yeah, that's the you're now going into another depth, right?
Just so you know, Tony's armors are EMP shielded, and the arc reactor is not affected by EMPs. So
the arc reactor is not affected by EMP.
Best of my knowledge. I could be wrong on that, but best of my knowledge, the arc reactor.
Technically speaking, the arc reactor is nuclear tech, right?
No, it's beyond that.
Oh, I thought it was. Oh, okay. Well, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Especially by the time it's actually above nuclear tech. So yeah, it's
fantastic. Okay,
it basically just runs itself for it's continual energy. Basically, cool. It's actually more based on Infinity Stone tech than it is nuclear.
Because are we talking comic? Oh
no! If you're
comic and film, you're right. You're right.
Yeah, there's it's more based on Infinity Stone tech. But anyway,
interesting. Okay,
especially in the film, especially in the film version. The film version, it is almost entirely based on that because Howard Stark had been studying the Tesseract, which was the Space Stone, I believe. He had been studying that to create the plans for the arc reactor. He just couldn't finish the arc reactor because he didn't have enough technology in his time.
Interesting.
But anyway,
I was going to say I'm down to deep dive into a nerd conversation like this. I think it's great.
Well, we're going to, but it's not about the MCU. It's not about DC. It's not about Batman or Iron Man.
Yes,
we're going to, but it does have some connection to the idea of alternate universe versions, which we mentioned, the alternate universe version of Tom Waits.
Yes.
And we know the MCU has,
I like that. That was good.
Its entire multiverse.
Yes.
Well, alternate universe is going to take a place in this conversation we're about to have. We're going to talk about this new Amazon Prime series that I decided after a few months of debating to finally watch. I was looking forward to it when I first heard the announcement. Then when I started seeing some things about it, I started worrying. And when it first came out, refused to watch it, heard a bunch of issues with it. Finally decided in my lack of shows to watch and also my need to find something to focus my frustration on, to watch it, especially because I happen to be reading the book series that it was based on. Decided, you know what, I'm going to give this thing a watch. And oh boy.
Okay, so real quick, before episodes. So before we get too deep into this, I'm just very, very curious. I have a very kind of on the subject question.
Yeah.
Are you a binger or do you do the week to week deal? Like depending on the series.
Depends. For this specific one, I'm binging because it's already
the whole thing's out. Okay, cool. I'm a week to weeker, very, very comfortably a week to weeker if that's all that I'm getting. Like that's what I'm getting with Discovery, and that's what I'm getting with Picard, and I'm a Star Trek nut. So
that's it depends on what it is.
Jam right now. Yeah, for sure.
You know, The Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett, I was watching those one a week. And then
those were the week to week types. Yeah.
Yeah. And after it was over, and same with all of the series, Hawkeye, Falcon Winter Soldier.
Oh, the Marvel series, yeah.
WandaVision. I was watching those once a week. I haven't started Moon Knight yet, which just came out. I'm working on that one. But yeah, I do those week to week. Typically, this one I was refusing to watch and then finally broke down to try to watch it while I'm rereading the book series that it is supposedly, I'm air quoting here, based on. And yeah, my poor wife has had to listen to how much wrong is happening in this. And why?
No, it's based on a book series. Okay.
Oh yes, why so much is happening. But we're gonna have that discussion after the break.
Okay.
So we're gonna take a break right now, and we'll be right back.
All right.
Hey friends, this is Mike from the Xennial Chronicles reminding you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Xenchron, spelled Xenchron, to keep up to date on all things TXC. And please check out our official website, theXennialChronicles.com, or if that's too much to type, Xenchron.com. Thanks again for listening, and now, back to the show.
And we are back, everybody.
All right. So
the to get it out of the way with the series, the Amazon Prime series that I am on is called The Wheel of Time.
Oh, you've talked about this before, like really wanting to see it, didn't you?
I was very interested.
You like
in
grew
it
up
when
reading
I first
these,
heard about
didn't
this.
you?
I didn't grow up reading them precisely. I got the first books when I was about 20 years old. My mother had seen them somewhere being sold in paperback for like $3 a book, so she grabbed as many of them as she could, which I think was up to book 7. Is what she ended up grabbing. I did have a friend that read some of them in back in high school, but this is one of those fantasy series that is kind of this is a deep dive fantasy series. Okay. People who are into fantasy reading, they've read. Everybody basically has to read Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. Maybe Silmarillion if you want to feel all, high and mighty over everybody else, if you can even understand what the hell is being written in Silmarillion.
Yeah, the only one.
God, that book is so confusing.
The only one of Lord of the Rings I read was Fellowship. Like read. I only read Fellowship. I read The Hobbit all the way through, and I read Fellowship, but I didn't finish the other ones. And I've got them. I just haven't been able to sit and finish them.
I will say this: watch the Peter Jackson movies. They give you actually a fairly good adaptation of the books. They do not give a perfect adaptation by any means.
I remember my parents who like my parents, or my stepmother specifically, was just absolutely all over the Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings. Like we grew up on the Hobbit. Like she had the audiobooks, the whole thing. So I have heard, like I have not sat and read, but I listened to the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit. Actually, they gave this to me because it's just so awesome. It's so cool. The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings had like a voiceover, they probably did a radio play. Yeah, it was a radio play, book on tape, sound effects, music, the whole shebang.
Yeah.
And
by the way, Star Wars did that too, right?
Star Wars did that?
Yeah, for the Star Wars movies, they did radio plays for them too.
Shut up! No way.
Yeah. Oh, do your deep dive and find them, sir.
Dude,
we'll find them.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so yeah, but the I'm gonna have to check that out. But the radio play for Lord of the Rings was fantastic, and my parents used to put that on and go to sleep to it. And I got those cassettes from them.
I believe in one of them, actually, Ian Holm, who played Bilbo Baggins in the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings movies. Mm-hmm. I believe he actually voices Frodo in one of the radio plays.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's some crossover of stuff. And I mean, here's the thing. The Lord of the Rings is considered one of the greatest fantasy worlds and fantasy books and settings ever. The whole universe that the Lord of the Rings creates, it's considered one of the best, and in many ways rightfully so. It does need to be understood that it was literally a book that all of them were books that this guy who was a linguist wrote to explain like 7 languages that he just made up based on other languages. He made up these languages, and then he wrote about a fictional place that gave the history and backstory to why all these languages existed, including how some languages shifted from one to another. So like there's multiple versions of Elven, and he explains in his history through the Silmarillion why the shift happens, because these elves go here and then these elves go there and these ones die. And so the shift in language somewhat happens. And That's the whole point of those. It's all about explaining these languages that he created. Conversely, even though it's not fantasy, it's very much a sci-fi novel series. The Dune series,
yes,
which recently was the Dune movie that came out.
Mm-hmm.
Very good movie, by the way. It's missing. It is, however, missing the most important scene that the author would have wanted in the movie.
Really?
Because he felt it was the most important scene in the book, because the books are about planetary ecology and what would happen if there was a feudal government system in a universe-wide scenario. And so each individual planet with their weird ecologies being a fiefdom for individual feudal lord and how that would work out. So this is about feudalism and planetary ecology. That's what the whole basis for those books were. He wrote a bunch of books to explain his views on feudalism and planetary ecology. That's
wow.
It. The whole planet Arrakis, that is the sand planet with the worms,
yeah,
that's because he was worried about dune conservation, like actual sand dune conservation. And what if that was a planet-wide thing? And what kinds of things could happen for the whole planet being a sand world and all these dunes? And how do you conserve the dunes, and how do you do this? What would happen to introduce water? Where's the water gone? And then how would people use these things in a feudal setting? And yeah, that's what inspired him to write those books.
Holy smokes.
And so it's interesting to find all the different, things behind it, the way the niches these things have. I digress a little bit, but again, with fantasy, Lord of the Rings is like the big deal. Another major fantasy player is the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe books. The entire series of that, which the Chronicles of Narnia is a very large series. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is actually, it was the first book that was I believe released. It's not the first book story-wise, chronologically. There's a book before it, The Magician's Nephew, that actually sets up a lot of what happens in the Chronicles of Narnia.
Really,
you find out where the lamppost comes from that they first encounter when they go through the wardrobe. You actually find out, funny enough, where the wardrobe comes from, and why it's connected to Narnia. The house that they are staying in, the Pevensey children are staying in, the old man that owns that house, you find out more information about him. You find out where Jadis, the Snow Queen, comes from. She's not originally from Narnia. There's a lot that happens in The Magician's Nephew to kind of set all of that up. Really sad ending, by the way, to the Chronicles of Narnia, the entire series. Yeah, really sad ending. Yeah, kind of effed up. And yes, Aslan the Lion is basically Jesus. Just so we're clear with that.
Yeah, I kind of figured that was the case.
But there's a huge number of other major fantasy authors and major fantasy worlds. There's a lot that were made up based off RPG games. You have a series of books for under the universe of the Dragonlance RPG game, basically versions of Dungeons and Dragons. So you have Dragonlance, you have Forgotten Realms. These are all worlds that are Dungeons and Dragons worlds, that these huge fantasy worlds were created with just thousands of characters. Some that for the fantasy book lovers, these names stand out. There's other authors like oh gosh, I can't even think of the guy who did the Shannara Chronicles. I can't think of his name right now. The Shannara Chronicles are another huge fantasy world. It's actually a post-apocalyptic world, but it's a fantasy setting. Really weird. Takes place on the west coast of the United States, but it's post-apocalyptic fantasy. The Wheel of Time series is one of these deep dive fantasy series. I mean, you got to be a hardcore fantasy lover typically to have encountered the Wheel of Time series. And it is probably one of the biggest robust built universes. Most of the action takes place on one kind of continent, but there are at least 12 different nations in this continent. Each nation is given its own clothing, its own accent, its own customs to deal with government, the mercantile class, the way that the classes interact with each other, and they are all different, but the ones close to each other share some similarities. It's an amazingly fleshed out, beautiful world. It also falls into the category of what would be considered high fantasy, which Tolkien falls into that category as well. These are fantasy where the story is about the main focus characters are, for the most part, good characters. They are heroic. They may have bad things that they do occasionally, but then they have to, make recompense for the bad things that they do. These are not your anti-heroes. These are not your morally gray people. These are good guys trying to strive for good and trying to, defeat the evil. Okay.
Okay.
This is kind of the hallmark of anything that would be high fantasy. Your focus is the good guys trying to defeat the evil. The good guys, again, sometimes bad. They may make some bad decisions, but they redeem themselves later with their better decisions.
Okay.
Okay. Technically speaking, Star Wars would fall under the high fantasy quotient of things. Star Wars is not sci-fi; it is fantasy. Let's be clear. Star Trek, sci-fi. Star Wars, fantasy. Let's be.
Yes.
That's the bent of it. It is based on
so people who get at odds about it, to be fair, are literally comparing apples to oranges in a more figurative sense. So are figuratively comparing apples to oranges. I find myself more often than not using literally as a figurative terminology, and it bothers me.
But it's acceptable for that now.
I know it is, but it still bugs me to the point that I catch myself, like I get mad at myself for saying things like that. But yes, to compare Star Wars to Star Trek is an apples and oranges comparison.
It is very much so.
Yes,
because they really are not the same genre. Yes, there are sci-fi elements within Star Wars, but the actual storytelling and the focus of the story is a fantasy-based focus, not a science fiction-based focus.
Yes.
And for instance, I mentioned Dune earlier. Dune is a science fiction based focus. There are fantasy elements in it, especially with considering the Bene Gesserit Sisterhood and the Weirding Way and the Kwisatz Haderach and all of that. So there are some possible fantasy elements into it, although even that they explain away through more of a sciencey bent than a fantasy bent, which is why it is science fiction. The Force just being throughout all living things and all of that. Midichlorians was kind of a way to try to make it sciencey, but let's be honest, the Star Wars is fantasy. And the idea, again, it's high fantasy in that we focus on these heroic characters that are trying to defeat the evil. Even Darth Vader at the end is somewhat a heroic character. He has a full arc of being a hero, falling from grace, and then redeeming himself at the end to the point when he's a Force ghost. He gets to be, Anakin again. He's not
right.
I prefer old Anakin Force ghost as opposed to younger Anakin Force ghost. Just my personal opinion, but still, he gets to be good again by redeeming himself. That's the whole point of the high fantasies. You're dealing with kind of the good element. This is what Wheel of Time is set up to be. It is a high fantasy. The main characters in this, these are the good guys. They have their trials and tribulations. They make mistakes. They do things that they shouldn't. They have to pay for them later, and they redeem themselves. And being good guys, that's the whole point of them. You follow the heroes through the story. Now, there's some people who don't like those kinds of stories because they feel it lacks the gritty realism that's necessary for their experience in things. They want things more real. They don't want that fantasy escape. I am not one of those people. I love the fantasy escape. I read stories, I watch movies, I watch TV shows because I want to have somebody to root for, somebody to want to win and be victorious. Okay?
You know what? I can understand that, and that actually makes a lot of sense. I think that is I'm not trying to hijack this conversation, but I think that says a lot, and I completely understand that. I also completely understand people that are looking for that. I don't necessarily look for that, but I can empathize with those that do. Like
you don't look for what? The gritty or the heroic?
Well, I tend to look for the gritty. Like, think about it this way. This is a good point to bring up the Marvel Cinematic versus DC Cinematic kind of stuff that we both kind of going back and forth on every once in a while.
If you're going to try to compare DC's anything to the Marvel Cinematic, at least stick with their animation, not their actual live action, because their live action we can both agree their live action has missed far too often.
There are certain ones, but then there are hold on before we get too deep in there. I think that there are times where we tend to disagree on which ones are like that. I'm not going to bring a large amount of those into play because I don't want to get into that part of the conversation. But I can understand the appeal of the Marvel movies being similar to what you're talking about and what you look for in a good movie, especially a good superhero movie or a good high fantasy based movie.
I want to know who my heroes are. And I want to be able to follow my heroes, and even have some characters that have, arcs where they are shady or bad guys or make bad decisions, but some of them are able to redeem themselves, and some of them are just the bad guy. But you still know who you're supposed to be rooting for.
And this is where I tend to, and I think this is where we tend to kind of cross a little bit, because in the fascination of that I have in the DC universe, especially the Batman universe, in general, I tend to find appeal in a not questionable morality, but in the understanding of what brings someone into a questionable moral stance. Because when you look at, case in point, like I have not seen the Batman yet, right? I have not read a lot, and I have done everything I can to save myself from being spoiled from certain details. I do not want to read the synopsis or anything. But part of the presentation of the Batman is the conflict, the moral conflict that exists within the character. The fact that the characters, all of them, bad, good, chaotic, peaceful, what have you, all of them had a similar starting point, that they were all human beings, and so they all went and drifted off. The appeal of the Batman universe and the Batman mythos is exactly that. That's why it's appealing to me. That's why I tend to gravitate towards even the animated stuff. That goes that way too, and a lot of the DC universe stuff tends to float that direction. With the Marvel, especially the cinematic stuff, you tend to find that your heroes are the heroes and the villains are the villains, and sometimes they may disagree, but you still know where their moral stance is. It's pretty clear cut.
Well, actually, I'm of the firm belief that that almost with the exception of one time I think to an extent they carried it this way with most of the Bayo Batman, but again, still not entirely. The Batman of the comics. Yeah. Let me get to the point I was.
Please continue. Yeah.
The Batman of the comics. And I will say, my two favorite comic book characters of all time have always been Spider-Man and Batman. One from each group. And the thing that I love the most about Batman in the comics is that while there was some conflict within him, and that's the conflict is a lot more modern than it's always been with him. While there was some conflict within him, there was one thing that held true about his moral code, which is actually why Batman is constantly having to put up with a whole bunch of crap. And this has actually come through in some of the newer media. Batman has kind of one rule. What's the one rule? What does Batman not do? Until of course the Dark Knight, until Frank Miller basically got his hands on crap. And
essentially, yeah, because even that is kind of back and forth. He didn't really fully go there, but you're right. You're saying that Batman essentially his one rule is he doesn't kill. Right.
Batman doesn't kill.
Right.
He arrests everybody, and so no matter what the Joker does, he doesn't kill the Joker.
He
doesn't
arrests,
drop the Joker.
He maims. He injures extremely badly.
Well, no,
but he doesn't kill.
He does not. I don't think even in the comics he didn't even maim for the longest time.
That was when Miller got a hold of him. Yeah, Miller wrote Dark Knight Returns. Going back to
Miller did, and this is the thing is. Yeah, this is the thing is. Miller took and did what I felt was he took a character that had a moral code. He took a character you could root for because he was fighting against the darkness, but he wouldn't give in to the darkness. And Miller had him give in to the darkness.
No, he didn't have him give in. Actually, what he did, and this is what I'm going to say that I disagree. I'm not going to say no as a factual statement because I feel that's cocky on my part, but I'm going to say I disagree in that he didn't make him give into it. He made him tread the line on it because he made him question whether or not giving into the darkness was the right choice. Because the chaos that ensued because he refused to give into it was the result of his refusal, or at least it made him consider that potential point.
Okay, I get, and you're right. That is a better analysis of it. But it started making it a little more difficult for me personally dealing with Batman. I get why that conflict would come in, but then there are certain media where it got that Batman did get a little bit more violent. And again, you have the Michael Keaton Batman that everybody loves. Mm-hmm. I mean, he technically kind of sort of helped kill the Joker. Which is a bad move anyway.
I mean, he did try to stop him from falling. He just missed him.
But he also killed in Batman Returns. He kills a couple people.
Does he? Does he set a dude on fire with like the turbines and shit?
Also attaches a bomb to somebody and throws him in the sewer where he blows up. So yes, Batman kills people.
Oh yeah, he went full Bugs Bunny in that shit, dude. It was weird.
and I mean, there are points where some of that started happening and made certain iterations of Batman more difficult for me. And this often happens sometimes when people try to take a product that's like that and try to turn it gritty when they want that idea of getting it a little more gritty, getting it a little more dark. Mm-hmm. They get into that realm of towing the line between being gritty and dark and towing into the line of being exploitative about things.
I can understand that.
And this is to bring it back to fantasy. This is where one of the other great fantasy book settings, basically said, screw that line. We're just going to go and embrace the exploitation of violence and nastiness. Now, it's not to say that in many of these other books, Dragonlance books, the books by Piers Anthony, another prolific fantasy writer, the Forgotten Realms books, the Wheel of Time books. Again, all these books that are a little bit more highbrow fantasy, a little bit more, mm-hmm. who your heroes are, you follow your heroes. They did allude to violence, and they'd allude to a violent event happening. They'd allude to maybe somebody that would a bad male character that would force themselves on a female character. But it would be, you knew it was happening, but you didn't get the gory details. And the example that I used to kind of explain the difference, take you back to the movie The Crow. Okay. When Eric Draven is going is in The Crow, is going on his kind of revenge tour, he hooks up with the guy that throws the knives, right?
Yes.
It's one of the first guys he ends up fighting.
Yeah.
And he stabs that guy with one knife, right? That's what you see on camera.
Yes.
And when that's all you see is the one knife, him stabbing him with the one knife. Right. But then when his body is found afterwards, he's basically covered in knives. He's got knives piercing all over him.
Right.
Same thing with, I don't remember that character's name, but the same thing with Fun Boy. You see him stick one needle in Fun Boy, but then when Fun Boy's body is found, it's just peppered with needles.
Right.
There's a difference. What that is doing is that's showing that violence happened. That's alluding to the violence,
right?
But you're not seeing the violence as it's happening. And many of these higher fantasies show, they allude to what's happening. to throw Star Wars.
You get the point. Yeah, you get the point with the consequences. You can see the consequences and not be,
not have to be exploitative about it.
Exactly. Yes.
Empire Strikes Back. Empire Strikes Back. Han Solo being tortured on the table. You hear him screaming from outside the thing. You see him lowered to the table and sparks and whatnot. He's screaming, and then afterwards he's all injured and hurt and whatever. Although you don't see any real marks on him, he's been tortured.
Right.
But you don't see every bit of it happening. Same thing with the first one when the droid comes in and is giving a shot to Princess Leia, and they're going to be interrogating her. You don't know what technically happens to her.
We have ways of making you talk. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But it alludes that some shit's going to go down.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to be exploitative and show it. Well,
no.
George R.R. Martin, when he wrote the Game of Thrones series, he just decided to be as exploitative as all time. And then, of course, this series gets turned into one of the first big fantasy TV series, and it is exploitative as all hell. Nudity, very, very violent killings, rapings. I mean, there's a brother and sister who are constantly having sex. Their kids they have multiple kids that the woman's husband thinks are his kids, but they're not because they all got blonde hair and he ain't got no blonde hair. God. And when one of their kids dies, when one of their kids is killed, the brother ends up raping the sister on the coffin of the dead kid. At least in the books. I don't remember if it happened in the series or not.
Wait, this isn't Game of Thrones? Are you fucking I missed Game of Thrones entirely. I had no appeal to Game of Thrones. Everything I was hearing about it was so fucking stupid that I hated the concept of Game of Thrones so much I actively avoided it. And it was one of those ones that I wish that I could have seen. There's no fucking way I'd watch that shit.
No, you don't want to watch it. I mean, there's for my research,
and everybody right now who is actually listening to this and going, "What are you talking about? You completely missed out on a fantastic series."
No, you didn't.
No, you didn't. And honestly, you probably should go, okay, I dare you to watch the whole fucking thing again. Watch all the incest and watch all the rape and watch all that stuff happen again, and don't let your stomach turn about it. That shit is like, I understand that there is a certain amount of appeal to the drama, but that is just way too fucking far for me.
Watch it with your 16-year-old.
Dude, right?
Dude,
yeah, and then this is not a recommendation, obviously. This is said entirely in jest.
I watched a portion of it because my wife was interested in watching it, and she does watch things that are a little more of that exploitative that I'm just not okay with. It's not my right to tell her that she can't watch what she wants to watch because she has the things she likes, and I won't say that they're morally hurtful. And I'm not saying to people who watch them, I'm not making a judgment on you. I just don't like to watch these things.
Yeah, I find them exploitative.
I find them dirty.
Yeah, I turned it on for like 10 minutes once, and I just there was nothing that was of appeal.
An example for you, an example of again a correlation of how you can indicate the violence without showing the violence. In Star Trek Into Darkness, when Khan finally is able to confront Admiral Marcus, he kills Admiral Marcus by doing what?
Oh my God, it's been so long since I've seen that movie.
He basically crushes his head. And you see him grab his head and start squeezing on his head.
Right.
And then it cuts away to Carol Marcus's reaction, Carol and Kirk's reaction, and you hear the crunching of the bones.
Yes. Okay? But it's all off camera.
You don't see it. Exactly. In Game of Thrones, there is a fight between Oberyn Martell and a warrior known as the Mountain.
Yeah. Heard of him.
And the mountain literally crushes his head, and you can see his thumbs poking into his eyeballs and his head being crushed and brains spilling out. You watch every single bit of it because
fucking Lord.
Because all they cared about was exploiting violence, and people sucked this up in droves. Nudity, violence, and of course most of the nudity, of course, being women, boobs and vages and whatnot, because that's what people want to see. And sex all over the place, people walking in on other people having sex and not paying attention to it, people being raped. All kinds of messed up things happening with
I blame? I blame a specific series for shit like this. That was just because it sounds very, very similar. Like everything you're describing to me. First off, I'm just going to say that...
What, Sons of Anarchy?
No. actually.
I felt the same about Sons of Anarchy.
Spartacus. And I watched Spartacus.
Oh yeah.
I watched the first season of Spartacus. I thought they had fantastic actors. I think that the acting was fantastic. I think the script was amazing. I think everything about the story was great. There was a lot of sex in there. There was a lot of sex, not just that, but there was, and think about it. It's about gladiatorial combat. It's about human slavery. It's about it's literally about a team of slaves that massacre the academy that they are enslaved within, and then go and become like it's world history, essentially. Very over dramatized world history, very CGI'd world history, but it is there. And there is a lot of naked people all up in that shit, like all over the place. And I'm not saying that there's nothing. I'm not saying there's anything particularly wrong with it, but I understand that's where Game of Thrones kind of got their whole run. You know what I mean? Yes. Like on how to present that. And the thing that I don't like about it, like that I'm looking at just as someone that looks at a series that everybody enjoys, that wants to try to be able to enjoy it, but I cannot see it in a presentation that I would be comfortable with, is that I hear tell that the acting is incredible. I hear that the stories in general are very good. Like, I love seeing anything Peter Dinklage does. You know what I mean?
He's the bright shining star in the whole thing. But
he's fantastic, and every other actor and actress that I can name by name, Emilia Clarke, and I can't name really anybody else right now. Wasn't Momoa in it as well in like the first season?
Momoa was in it for the first season. Kit Harington did a fairly decent job.
Sean Bean is in it. Like, and again, this is like people that were like, oh yeah, all those people died in like the first 2 seasons. Yeah, I know. Bean heard all of that. The first season. But the issue that I have is that there's so much potential that you could see good acting, but it is interjected with such a reckless exploitation cinema. You know what I mean? And I'm not even talking about like camp exploitation. I'm not talking about like trash film type shit.
This is violence and violent action for violence sake. This is for shock value and for people to watch it. There is no story point to present it the way that it's being presented.
Yeah.
It's being presented that way for the shock value sake of it. Same with the nudity, same with the sex. It's being presented for the shock value sake, not for the sake of storytelling.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
That's the issue. That's the issue. Well, as this Wheel of Time was coming about, there was talks about how it was, they were wanting to do it because of the success of Game of Thrones, and that started to have me worried. I started seeing some casting news, and I started getting worried because there was so many differences in the casting news as far as the physical types of each person that were problematic to me. And before if anybody does know Wheel of Time series, the books and then the show, before anybody tries to say it had to do with any of the cultural changes, doesn't really bother me if you could keep the cultural changes the same per area, which they did a pretty good job of keeping them the same. So for instance, the majority of the characters of the initial group of characters come from one small village, and they kind of made sure that village had a kind of a mixed race, mixed ethnicity look to the entire village.
Oh, so you're talking about more of like a multicultural background type of cast, right?
Yeah. It was the cast was written as all of them appearing to be, for the most part, white. And the fact that the actors are not cast that way, I'm totally okay with that. There's enough in-world explanation for that. And admittedly, within the world, there are people of different skin tones, and it is pointed out that they have different skin tones based on the different areas of the continent in the Wheel of Time that they come from.
Okay, so what you're talking about here is the fact that there is, if I may help clarify, this is about like if you're racist gatekeeping, quote unquote, then that's not what you're about. Like, and as a matter of fact, the fact that they even have an explanation and they're casting they're using ethnic diversity as part of both being representative and understanding of the background and the story, that is not the problem here.
And characters that have been described as one way and are slightly different, that's fine as long as you make it like like one of the major characters in it, a kind of a warrior character. He comes from a specific area of the world, and they have an Asian actor playing the part. Okay, fine. Make sure though that the culture of that country has the same kind of, and the country surrounding it have same or similar culture, so that it all works congruently with where they're from. I'm okay with that. That part's not an issue to me.
Okay.
The slight changes in some of the storytelling, aging up the characters a little bit, in an attempt to not make it appear like a YA situation, because the characters start out at the age of about 15, 16, which for anybody that's played any role-playing games, that's usually when you kind of start your adventure, is your characters 15, 16, 17, 18 coming of age, and the adventures start. I mean, that's Luke's about that age.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? That's part of the way these storytelling tropes work, is you come of age and you learn these things and grow as these things are happening to you.
Right.
They did some aging up for it, which is fine. They eliminated certain characters that, while have some importance, could be dealt with in different ways, eliminated certain locations, and had something that happened in one city, and then they were in that city and then went to another city and other things happened. They just combined the two cities together and had it all happen in the second city. These are story things that I can get behind, especially because the Wheel of Time actually sets up one of the beauties of this. It gives the opportunity for different iterations and different versions, because it sets up a device within the story, these things called portal stones. Now let me give a little bit of backstory, since I know you know nothing about the Wheel of Time. One of the things about it being a fantasy thing is there is a form of magical power within this world. Okay. It's a form of magical power that people can dip into, specifically two different versions of it. Two different versions that they know about, that men can dip into and women can dip into. Okay. They can channel this power to and by channeling it, there's 5 different things that they channel together to make things happen: fire, earth, air, water, and spirit. Okay. It's almost like bending, but for all you airbender fans.
Yeah.
But they channel these things in different ways to make things happen, like, again, what we would think of as magical effects. Okay. Women can channel, or the women that learn how to channel or have the ability to channel, they have a society that kind of helps to police the world and do things within the world of these channelers, that they work together. The men, because of something that happened way back in the 3,000 years ago in the history, which the books detail quite well, the men who channel end up going crazy because of something that happened to the male side of this source, the power source. Okay. Something happened to taint the male side of it. It's long history I would have to give you to make you fully understand. But something happened to taint the male side of this. And so any men that start channeling this power, they end up going crazy.
The
story is about basically souls can be reborn into people. And this guy who was part of the male side being tainted, and who went crazy and basically kind of half destroyed the world and sent them from a futuristic world back into like a middle-aged kind of world for 3,000 years, by basically his misuse of the power when he went crazy.
Okay.
There's prophecies that he will be reborn into somebody else, and he will fight off the Dark One, the evil power.
So the guy that went crazy is supposed to come back and make everything better?
Before he went crazy, he was like the leader fighting against the Dark One. And part of the victory against the Dark One, I guess I don't need to give you too much history. The victory against the Dark One, when they made that victory, it is what tainted the male half of the source.
Okay.
They won against the Dark One, but it tainted the source, and then he went crazy afterwards.
Okay.
But he's supposed to come back and lead a fight against the Dark One again, because the Dark One's going to break out of the prison they put him in. So.
How very strangely quasi-biblical.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Actually, very, very much so. To the point that the Dark One is called Shaitan, which is a.
Oh boy! How? Yeah. Let's go ahead and just put it right on its face, huh?
That's an Arabic. It's an Arabic version of Satan.
Yeah.
So, No, it follows a lot of the standard hero archetypes. This is like, again, this is the pure high fantasy of following all those things and having your good characters and having the people that you can follow. And violence is there. It's present. There's wars throughout this entire thing, but they don't go to the deep exploitative explanations of them.
Okay.
You know the things have happened, but they don't do the exploiting of it.
Okay.
But anyway, these portal stone things exist. I had to get back to that because it's important.
Okay.
The portal stones exist, and they have the ability, if you can channel the power into these stones are kind of stuck into the ground, and they have a bunch of like pictures and hieroglyphs on them. If you channel into the correct hieroglyphs for the place that the glyph that represents where you are, and then the glyph that represents where you want to go, you can actually basically teleport to the other portal stone location. But it doesn't just take you within that world. It posits that there is a, very similar to the MCU multiverse, there is a multiverse, a bunch of different worlds
Holy
that
shit.
could have been.
Okay.
The thing with it is the main world that the books are contained in, that's considered the main world. But all the other worlds are basically the idea of you make one decision and it branches off to a whole nother world, make another decision, it branches off. All these are other worlds that could have been if different decisions were made, if different things happened.
So it's an omniverse of timelines.
Basically.
Yeah. Okay.
But the only one that's real, that's completely real, is the main one that they're in. All these others are the other possibilities of worlds that could be. There are multiple ways to touch these worlds that could be. One of them is through the portal stones. You can send yourself to these other worlds. Another one is through a dream world, which the dream world almost overlaps and contains all the worlds within it.
Holy
Very weird.
smokes. Okay.
Like I said, this is a very deep.
So yeah, I was gonna say
there's 14 books in the series, and the original author Robert Jordan wasn't even able to finish these books before he died.
Oh.
He made it to book 11. He left his notes for the last 3 books, and another author, Brandon Sanderson, who's another fantasy author, again high fantasy work.
Right.
He was able to, with the notes and with help from Robert Jordan's widow, finish the novels. The last 3 do feel different as far as the different writer's voice. You can tell that it feels a little different, and he's a little looser with some of the characterizations of the 3 main characters specifically. But there are in these 14 books, there are thousands of named characters.
Good Lord.
Thousands of them. This is a very thick, very detailed. The history on this, the customs for everything, very, very detailed. So much source work. And I'm watching this show, and within the first episode, all I'm seeing is, now I'm trying to, and this is the reason I mentioned the portal stones. I'm trying to look at the show, as maybe this is one of the worlds that could have been, right?
Right.
But they are taking fundamental things that are rules in the world, fundamental rules. Like, for instance, when the people are channeling, only women who can channel can see the flows of the channeling. So it looks like, to a normal person who doesn't know how to channel, like this woman's waving her arms and then shit happens away from her that you can't see why. Other channelers can see the different things that they're weaving together, the different powers they're weaving together to make the effect happen.
Huh.
But it's showing everybody being able to see these people doing it. And it's like, no, it doesn't work that way. Why are you doing that? There are customs for the various things that are just falling apart. But you also have, throughout the entire series, one of the most blatantly wrong things in this is it has been taken from a high fantasy series to the low gritty fantasy series, where you are seeing huge amounts of blood and guts, to the point like you're watching these giant creatures. They're shadow spawn creatures created by the bad guys that are, basically horrific monsters out of your nightmares. In the books, they're different versions of them, but they only have one version in the TV show because it's cheaper just to render one version of it and then replicate that all over the place. It's basically like a minotaur with like more horns and like a pig face and,
good Lord,
cloven hooves and whatnot. And you see one basically approach one of its dying comrades and rip its stomach open and start eating its intestines and pulling them out. And I mean, in gory detail of all that happening.
What the fuck?
And it's like,
seriously?
That's very, very, very much so. There's a fair smattering of nudity. Interestingly enough, of course, just boobs, because boobs are okay to be for nudity, but there's enough nudity in there where almost no nudity is discussed anywhere in the books. There's a mild amount, but even then there's specific things to them. Like in one of the cities that they're in, part of the cultural thing is shared communal baths, where basically everybody just hops into these shared communal baths naked, and nobody pays attention to it culturally. You're not checking each other out culturally, or if you do, you're doing it kind of side eye. You're not making it known that you're checking the other person out. But you could be in a bath with a noble, and it's no big deal. And you talk and just pretend like basically you're not naked in the bath together. That's just the cultural thing. There are cultures in this world that do stuff like that. That where nudity is not necessarily a big deal in certain settings.
Right.
And so the richness of the culture in this, but no boobs everywhere. Well, not everywhere, but enough boobs, enough violence, enough. And I'm watching it. First of all, it looks actually, they tried to age the people up to make it not look like a YA thing. Young adult, for anybody that doesn't know what I'm saying about YA.
Okay.
But the way they're dressed, instead of wearing clothing that you would expect for a quasi medieval setting, they're all wearing trench coats. Now they're the medieval looking trench coats, but it's the freaking trench coats. Like, oh, okay, so you're like a Knight's Tale version of a fantasy setting. Perfect. All right. It's exactly what we're looking for here. And then just taking something that should be high fantasy and turning it into, it would be like if we were watching Star Wars and you're watching somebody get like RoboCopped with a lightsaber. You know what I mean?
What the hell?
What happens to RoboCop in the beginning of it?
Yeah.
Could you imagine watching a Star Wars thing where somebody gets RoboCopped with a lightsaber?
Dude. That would throw the whole thing off for me. I wouldn't want to watch it.
Exactly, because Star Wars has that high fantasy thing. And I'm watching this going, the story sins are one thing. The relationship sins, turning people that are best friends, turning two women that are best friends in the novels into lesbian lovers. It's like, really, why?
Whoa.
They couldn't just be best friends? No, they have to be lovers, apparently. And of course, I
understand if that kind of stuff is in the original material, but
no, not.
Was it something that just wasn't considered at the time? Like, again, I don't know. I'm not sure if that would be something that would particularly bug me, but is it exploitative on its face is the question.
When people, yes, when at one point earlier, because you have a person that's in the one of them is the head of this group of these women channelers. The other one is just one of the main characters. And in public, the head had to yell at this one and tell her that she had to find herself on her knees, prostrated in front of her to accept punishment for what she did wrong. And then you find out afterwards, I knew because I know the characters that they were friends, but they end up meeting together afterwards. And I'm thinking, okay, they're friends. I was waiting for them to meet and talk. And then they kiss, and then they make the one that's in charge makes the comment of being on their knees, and she drops to her knees.
Whoa.
And so, yeah, there's some exploitative going on with it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And there's just these are two that are friends that
as someone who's wholly unfamiliar with the series, I'm definitely gonna have to take your word for it on this one because I've never read the books. I mean, there's how many books you said there were 14?
Yes.
I was never familiar with the series at all.
They are thick, heavy reads of books. And that's the thing is your Game of Thrones, I firmly believe, is responsible for taking what could have been a very, and admittedly, they've flat out said that they're doing what they're doing with it to try to get the people that are the showrunners for this, the writers for this, the directors for this, they're doing what they're doing with it to try to pull in the Game of Thrones audience. And so they said, we have to be more gritty than what the novels were. But what they've done is instead of being gritty, they have become exploitative and pulled themselves away from the true nature of what these novels were supposed to be. Game of Thrones didn't do that. Game of Thrones gave you what the novels were supposed to be. I know I watched the majority of the series because it was on here to watch, and I as a result, I read the books. I read all of the books to see how close it was, and they changed stuff as you would expect. I mean, again, Lord of the Rings dropped Tom Bombadil completely from the movie, so there's things that and Arwen is in there where in the books Arwen doesn't show up until after God, I can't think of his name right now. Aragorn is crowned as king. She's never in the book. She never appears. She's only in the appendix stuff. She never appears within the actual book of the Lord of the Rings. When Aragorn is going with the hobbits to try to get into Rivendell, it's the sons of Elrond that meet up with him and help get Frodo into Rivendell. Arwen's not there. She's just not present at all. And they wanted to put her at the battle. The producers of the movie wanted to put her at the Battle of Helm's Deep, which again, she's never there. They even filmed her being there, and Peter Jackson fought to get the shit out because she's not there. That's a big story deviation. But they wanted it in there so that there was, a romantic subplot thing going on. Right. And it's like, didn't need to be there. That's not what Tolkien was writing about. He didn't care about the romantic subplot. Oh, well, people need that. That's so Lord of the Rings had its things too, but still fairly faithful. Game of Thrones was a faithful adaptation for the most part, especially to the nature and the mentality of the novels. This is a Game of Thrones bastardization of possibly one of the richest high fantasy novel universes ever. And I know we have to finish because I've gone on long enough with this, because I could go on for another hour and a half about all of the issues and problems with this. But I did this purposely to keep it short, just to at least focus on the fact that if it was just storytelling differences, the differences in age, the differences in certain characters and when they pop into the story and when they pop out of the story, I could totally deal with all of that as it being like the Portal Stones give the opportunity of one of the worlds that could have been. I could totally deal with that. But the presentation by the makers of this series, the showrunners, the writers, the directors, the presentation to purposely try to emulate the look and feel and spirit of Game of Thrones, to give people their exploitative violence and sexuality that apparently they're looking for, just so painful to see something that I love so much sullied like that.
Yeah, I can understand something like that because you're coming from a completely different background on it. You're not just looking as somebody that was like, I can understand it's a combination of two different frustrations here, right? Because at least with what you were saying with Game of Thrones is that that's the way the books themselves were written. So George R.R. Martin himself did that. Like that was those who read the books and those he wrote the series for were looking for that. So when they watched the series, you knew what you were getting. But
the only thing they were bitching about was certain story elements and certain elements that didn't happen as bad sometimes as they did in the books.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I would say at that point that like I consider the amount of frustration that you have for watching this, especially knowing that it's some kind of I know we keep saying the word over and over, but it's kind of like the word of the day. Like it's an exploitative look at trying to take a series and then change it enough to where it is provocative enough to catch a Game of Thrones audience, but it's using an intellectual property that they don't have to think about creating from scratch.
And I think the hardest part is it's taking that intellectual property and making something out of it that is not made for the people who love that intellectual property, but for people who love a different property.
Right, exactly. It's okay, let's see what we can do. We've got this series of books here. Let's go ahead and adapt them, but we got to make sure that we really catch this old Game of Thrones audience because they really liked that. So let's go ahead and throw that all in there too. We might not go as far as Game of Thrones, but just enough for them to dig onto it. Like, that's too much for me. That becomes too derivative of the original work, to the point where the thing will end up getting canceled by the second season. I mean, is it that big of a hit right now?
It's at least going to have a second season.
Yeah, I'd be hard pressed to believe that this thing's going to go past the second season. The sophomore season is the one that really is the clincher. If they fail the second season, dude, the series is done.
Well, I mean, I'm only up to episode 6. I still have 2 more episodes to go. I have to see how the hell they deal with the Eye of the World, and whether they have them fight Agenor and Bethamel at the Eye of the World, or they're going to have them actually try to fight somebody different. I don't know, and how they're going to deal with it. Those are names you have no idea about.
Nope.
But the beginning of, I can say this, which is if all that happens at least roughly the way it's supposed to, the beginning of the second book takes place in the country of Shinar, and that's the country I'm talking about, where people have the nude baths. So I mean, it's at least some way
you get to see
hooked. And the first couple of things, and then at the end of that novel, they also encounter another group of people from across the ocean that keep slaves. Just to show you, there is some darkness in these novels. I'm not saying that there's not, but the way it's handled is the key to how it's, the way it's presented, the way it's handled is the difference between being exploitative and not. These people from across the ocean come and try to invade. Technically, they don't think they're invading; they think they're reclaiming, but they're invading basically. And they have a rigid caste system within their kind of culture. And part of that rigid caste system is people are owned as property. They're not even slaves; they're just property. And one of the lowest levels of property, you basically are in a sense acting like a slave. You do all the things that you're told to do, but it's so ingrained in their society to look at those people as property and not necessarily as people, that what they wear to show that they are at that caste of society, that level, they wear robes that are basically white and sheer, completely see-through, nothing else underneath it. There's another example where there would be nudity, but nobody from that culture even recognizes the nudity in them, because they just see them as literally just objects. They're not to the level of being really human. They're objects. And it's not, it's based on what's happened to you in society, what you've done, things, when you do things that would get you lowered to that level of society. You know what I mean? If you've made mistakes, broken certain laws, that kind of thing, you're not born into it. It's not a racial thing. It's literally about where you get sifted based on your actions and the things you do. The laws you break, that kind of stuff. You break a certain number of laws or certain laws, you are reduced to that point, and to the point where you accept it because you know that that's part of what the society is. So you accept that role, and that's what you are from that point on. And those people in those roles don't have to worry about being sexually exploited, because the other people don't see them as people to exploit that way. They are literally objects that do things for you. That's it. It's such depth to the culture. I'm not saying there's not darkness in it, but the way that it is handled and dealt with is on a higher level than the exploitation of things. When they talk about those people that they're called Dakavel, when the people from the continent see these people in these sheer robes completely naked, they're shocked, like, what the heck is going on? They're looking away like, I'm not going to look at this. What the heck, this naked person? And nobody notices this like naked person. Why do they not notice this naked person? What is going on? And learning that that's part of that culture and whatnot. So they handle it in a way it still shows you that there's darkness in the world, but it doesn't exploit that darkness. It doesn't elevate that darkness in any way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. It's just having a mention of it without having to bring it to the forefront as a major feature, and whether or not that is actually whether or not that is going to be explored. Like, basically, this next few episodes that's supposed to deal with this is going to essentially be the final nail in the coffin for you or not. I'm assuming.
Well, no, that'll actually be at the end of the second season. If that would come at the end of the second season if they follow along with the books, because that comes at the end of the second book.
Okay. Dang.
But
man, this sounds like you've got a lot of you've still got a lot of binging to do before you fully make up your mind on this.
Oh no, my mind is made up. I absolutely hate this series, but I will have to watch it for the specific fact of being able to rip it apart for all of its mistakes and inconsistencies that are not even stuff that I can chalk up to being a different world, like the fact that they use a specific item that is supposed to be, anybody is supposed to be able to use this item by a feature on the item. It's a gate into a set of pathways that kind of, again, get you from one place to another very quickly.
Right.
There's an item on this gate shaped like a leaf that you pull off of one location, put it into another location, and it will open this gateway. Okay.
Okay.
It requires nothing. It requires no ability to channel any power. It requires no special thing except to know where the leaf is and where to move it to open the gateway to walk through. Okay.
Okay.
At the end of this last episode that I just watched, they go to enter this gateway, and of course, the lady has to channel to get into the gateway, and I'm just like, you don't channel at Waygates. You don't, to get into the ways, you don't have to channel. Anybody can get into the ways. It's the whole freaking point of what the ways do in the entire story is that anybody can open the way gate and travel through the ways. You don't have to be a channeler. But, that's one of those things where, like, because it's a specific plot point,
right,
and a very big one as to how those things operate, and they're doing it differently. That's one I can't just chalk up to.
Gotcha.
Oh, it's one of the different worlds that could be.
That's unforgivable at this point.
That's not how these things work within the rules of this world. There's changing some story elements, but there are certain rules of how things are supposed to work. That doesn't work like that.
Okay. I understand there. So it's deriving so far that like, that's pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah. So I will obviously have more to say about this series later. And if you are a reader, a lover of reading, they're expensive to find now because, again, the stupid series come out. My wife was trying to buy me a new set of the books because I have up to book 11 in paperback. The last 3 I have in hardback because I bought them like the day they came out. I'd say about half of my paperbacks are taped in the bindings because they've ripped in half from me reading them so many times. I've read this book series. I think I read it 6 times. I'm on my 6 times fully through. I'm on my 7th time reading it.
Damn.
I love
the
these
hell
books.
Out of this. Okay. Yeah.
I love these books. So if you ever get the opportunity to read the Wheel of Time books, they are a very interesting series of books. Very, very depth of world. They are a lot, though. They're a lot of reading. I'm not going to lie. They are a lot. If you get a chance to get them as a book on tape, hell, listen to it on tape. I have no issues with book on tape. If that's the way to get your reading in is by listening to somebody else read it for you, hey, at least you're getting more stories in your head and maybe some enjoyment.
Hey, speaking of book on tape, before you go there, speaking of book on tape, Ian Holm, I did look this up while you were doing all that.
Yeah.
Ian Holm was the voice of Frodo Baggins in the 1981 BBC radio drama of Lord of the Rings.
Yep.
So if you want to hear Bilbo Baggins be Frodo Baggins, like 20 years before he was Bilbo, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Look up the BBC radio drama.
Or I mean, if you want to hear one of the most famous Ashes ever be Frodo Baggins, if you want to look at it that way.
One of the most famous, which ones?
Ashes. Character's named Ash.
Oh, yes.
Because there's two famous Ashes. There's Evil Dead Ash, right, and then there's Alien Ash.
Yes, I knew you were saying Alien Ash. I mean, there is a third Ash.
What's the third one?
That's kind of I'm Ash Ketchum.
Okay, yeah, but I mean,
you got to give Pokemon credit, man.
Yeah, I'll give credit.
At least you knew. You still knew.
Yeah, I I admittedly, it wasn't one that immediately came to my head. I was thinking of the others.
Yeah,
Bruce Campbell, Ian Holm. Got to think of those.
Oh, yeah. Those guys are a whole different level, man.
I would ask if you were surprised that I knew that, but you probably weren't. That Ian Holm.
I wasn't necessarily. I was surprised that you actually skipped it up, though. The opportunity was there.
Anyway, Mike, where would people be listening to me pitch so much about this Wheel of Time series?
Well, you could be listening to that on our website, the Xennial.
By the way, this is the last you've heard about it. There will be...
Say what? What's that? Sir? Sir, where did you go? Did you just cut out?
Are you there?
Dude, you just cut out for like a solid 20 seconds. Maybe 15.
Wow.
I'm keeping it in. Now, what was that? Oh, come on.
Hello?
Yeah, you cut out again.
Are you there now?
I am.
I lost you for like ever.
Dude, I was trying. I'll play you the clip after this is done.
So let's try that again. Okay.
I hope so. I don't know how long ago that was that you asked to say, let's try that again. And I hope, are you hearing me now? Can you hear me now?
Are you hearing me now?
Yes, I think. Okay. So I'm just going to go into it. Okay.
I'll just go from Mike. Where can people be hearing me talk about Wheel of Time for the first time? And it will happen again. The wheel weaves what it will.
You could be listening to us on the XennialChronicles.com or ZenChron.com if you don't want to type that much. You could also be checking us out at most other major podcast platforms. We know we're on Spotify. We know we're on TuneIn. We know we're on Google Podcasts. Don't know about the other ones, though. But at least we're at those three. Also, we are on YouTube as well. If you are not listening to us on YouTube, please go to YouTube right now. Search for the Xennial Chronicles on YouTube and find our page. And make sure that you click on this podcast if you haven't already listened to it. Listen to it there. And while you're on that, because it's going to be in video form, underneath that video, make sure that you click the like button. And right next to that, make sure you click the subscribe button. And then next to that, James, there's one more thing they can click. What is that?
The bell.
That's right. Please click the bell. Make sure you get notified the next time we put out a podcast or video or anything else like that. And I think that's it for me. How about you, sir?
So yes, also while you're there, make sure to check out Mike's other two pages on YouTube. His Chronosode game page, which he does with his wife. This is him and his wife playing video games in chronological order of the story, not in order of the release date.
Yes.
It's basically Mike sucking at video games really badly and trying to do funny voices, which, whatever. And then his other page, Ruling Note Music, which apparently one of the topics that we talked about tonight, Jethro Tull and Metallica, may be an upcoming episode on his Ruling Note Music page.
Yeah, it may be. This
is him, full videos, by the way, talking about various music things, music history, albums, music gear, recording things, whatever music related, that's going to happen on there. And just for giggles for you, again, if you're on YouTube with this, there was a fan video made, I'm going to say about 10 years ago, of the opening chapter of the first book in the Wheel of Time series, The Eye of the World. Which deals with that guy I was telling you about that he was the back 3,000 years ago. He was the one who fought against the Dark One, and ended up going crazy and breaking the world after he beat the Dark One. That chapter deals with him and his after his madness, he sees what he's done and when he kills himself as a result. Spoiler, but just that chapter was filmed as kind of a fan film with, of all people, Billy Zane playing one of the roles. With Billy Zane playing one of the roles. He plays Ishmael, the one of the Forsaken, one of the bad guys. Yeah, he plays Ishmael, and it's really, really cheesy, like super cheesy, really bad special effects because of when it was done. But it's worth watching just for some giggles, just for a little bit of fun.
Oh, that's great.
But anyway, that's all we have for you today. We'll talk to you again next week.
Y'all have a good one.
Thank you for tuning in, friends. The journey continues next week.